Good evening. In 1989 was published a book that was on a bestseller list for many, many months. And to this day, it's considered an all-time bestseller. It was called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stefan Covey. So he found certain qualities and habits that make you successful. And he followed very effective people, analyzed them psychologically, and measured their success. And what were their habits? What were the qualities that made them to be so effective? Recently, someone sent me a link to 16 tips, 10 life-changing tips. Another one had 13 life-changing tips. Think big, balance in life, don't fear failure, resolve to succeed, etc., etc., etc. Different qualities, tips to succeed in life, to change your life, to be positive. Life-changing tips was the title of that article or that concept. These are details. 7 habits, 10 or 13 life-changing tips. But then there's the essence of it all. There is that jolt of energy, epiphany, the illuminating experience, the illuminating realization, when you say, aha, now I get it. And that aha moment, that jolt of energy, you need to be inspired to be successful with the 7 habits and the life-changing tips. We find a similar idea in Yiddishkeit. We know there are 613 mitzvahs. Ramach mitzvahs aseh, 248 positive mitzvahs. Shasa lo aseh, 365 prohibitions, what you're not allowed to do. The do's, 248 of the do's, 365 of the don'ts. Together you have 613. And the Chazal, our sages, tell us that these corresponds to the Ramachi Vorim B'Shasagid. They correspond to the different body parts. And they calculated that we have 613 body parts between the limbs and the organs and the veins and the arteries and the nerves, sinews, between all of the body parts that we have, we're going to come up with a total of 613. So the 613 mitzvahs correspond to the 613 parts of our body. So what's the connection? The connection you'll find already in the Kabbalah and the Chasidus or Midrashim. Because if we have 613 mitzvahs, they energize the 613 body parts. They energize us physically. And also the Kabbalah says, just like there's 613 physical body parts, there are also 613 spiritual. The neshama has that. Because the neshama gives vitality to the body. So just like the body has 613, the neshama has 613. And where does the neshama get its energy? The illuminated realization, that is Torah. So we're talking about habits and tips, but then all of this has to be energized by some essence, by some illuminating realization, by some aha. Similarly, what is the aha for our being, for our Jewish being, for the world's existence? Is Torah. Because Torah is the neshama of everything. And in Torah itself, the Zohar calls the inner dynamics, the inner teachings of Torah, which concludes Kabbalah and Chasidus, that is called Nishmasa D'Oraisa, the soul of the Torah. The Torah in general is the light and the energy of all of Yiddishkeit, and through that to all of the world. And then there's the neshama of Torah, the spirit of Torah. That's Kabbalah and Chasidus. Hasidic specifically is the essence of the essence. And that's what we're learning here. We're on the 8th chapter of Inyana Shel Teres Chasidus, the Rebbe's masterpiece. Why Chasidus, the study of Chasidus, is so important. And we're going to delve in that in some interesting points here. So I'm reading from the text, those who have a text. This energy that Chasidus empowers and zaps and energizes everything in the world, and we explained that since it's connected to Mashiach in the previous chapters, we explained how the coming of Mashiach is tied with the teachings and the study and the spreading of the teachings of Chasidus. So therefore, it affects the world. The world, olam katan zeh ha'adam va'olam kepshutei, man and the world around us. So that energy, nimshachas ma'achayis shachsidus machnisa b'chol inyan ha'torah uvo al yedei chayis zu. This energy, this vitality that Chasidus affects the world, which is going to be realized in an open way when Mashiach comes, but certainly in an inspirational way and in a life-changing way to us as individuals even now, is that comes about through understanding how Chasidus gives vitality and insight and inspiration in the study of Torah. Because everything is Torah. Everything in life is Torah. Our Chazal tell us that how did Hashem create the world? The blueprint of creating the world was Torah. And the way it is illustrated by the Chazal, when Hashem said, "Let there be light," he was reading from Chumash. He was reading from Chumash. There's a heavenly Torah text or script, and it was the Torah script, so to say, which the Torah script in a higher level. It's not the standard script like we have by us, but in the essence of the Torah script, it says, he let there be light. He was the script, the lines Hashem said from Torah. Because through Torah, Hashem created the world. We're not going to go into how to explain that philosophically, but that's another discussion. But the point is illustrated by this medrash, that Hashem's blueprints for creating the world means is the energy, is the DNA, if you want. We're talking about the atom we were speaking about the other week. The atom is, so to say, in the physical world, they are the atoms and the molecules, the makeup, the inner dynamics of the physical world. So there's the DNA and the atoms of the spiritual world. And then there's this energy, that Torah, this vitality, that Chasidus affects the world, is first of all through affecting Torah. And he's especially going to go into a literal example of this in the next chapter. But over here in this chapter, he's going into the general understanding of this idea. How the way ideas are in Chasidus changes the way we see all aspects of Torah. But Torah, Dalat Chalakim. In Torah, there are 4 parts. And this is universal. Torah is Pardes. Pardes is the orchard of Torah. It's a term found already in Gemara. 4 words. Pardes. So Torah is like an orchard. You have fruits, different flavors. So in Torah, and every study of Torah, when you study Chumash, there's the story. Pardes is Pshat, is the story. Remez, you look at the words and the abbreviations of the words. Remez is the allusion. So if you have the wording here in such a way, you will find a medrash or a Kabbalah sefer will say, You see the wording over here. This is hinting to what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. That's remez. It's a hint. Then there's drush. Pshat, remez, drush is the third way of studying Torah. Drush, I like to use the word derivation, where you're obtaining or learning something from a certain source. Much of halacha is drush. Well, the drush, it's not usually in common language. Drush is when a rabbi gives a sermon, it's a drush. And I see sometimes they translate it over here, it's sermonic, homiletic. It's much more than that. Because when the Chazal learn a halacha from a verse, they call it, the Chazal, Darshu Chazal, they say they learned the halacha from this wording. You know, it's not in the text so clear. It's not the simple meaning of the text, but from here you can understand, from this text source, you can understand that now in this halacha, the din would be like that. Or to learn a new din, to learn a new halacha. That's a drasha. It's a higher level than a hint, which I was thinking about. It says pshat, it's first is the text. You're reading the text. You have a if you don't know Hebrew, you have a translation. So what does the text say? Whether it's in Chumash, when you're learning the story, a biblical story, whether it's in Gemara, there's the text. Then there's allusion, there's hints. So the hint is also in the text, because it depends on the wording. Then the drasha is not in the text. It's an understanding. From this you can understand something else. Or it's a slight twist in the wording, but it's not as strongly connected to the text like remez. Higher than that is soid. Soid is secrets of the Torah, the Kabbalah. So these four halakim are what's generally understood. The Torah is a Chasidus, then there's Chasidus. Teaching Chasidus is already a new category. Even though generally it's considered within the realm of Kabbalah, and to a certain degree it is another presentation of Nishmasa, the rise of the soul of the Torah, and it deals with Kabbalistic issues, but it's in a class of its own. And the teachings of Chasidus, and that is one of the brilliant ideas in this work, how the Rebbe is going to show how Moida'ani, which we're going to be learning about it in the next chapter, something as simple as Moida'ani, we thank Hashem in the morning, how it's in the simple meaning of the text, how it is a remez, the allusion, what it hints to, another thing, drush, a certain halacha we can learn from it, the Kabbalah of it, and the Chasidus of it, and how Chasidus illuminates every aspect of these four. So and that continues inside the text. When you learn Chasidus, you'll find explanations in the simple text. You'll find explanations of remez, about the wording, abbreviation, Rashi Tevis. You'll find drush. You'll find Kabbalah. So first of all, it does explain an insight into every aspect of these four levels of understanding Torah that are universal. And in parentheses, so that also gives you to understand that Chasidus is not, since it illuminates all aspects of Torah, so you understand it's not only an explanation of Kabbalah. He puts that in parentheses, and we're going to elaborate soon on that. The connection between Kabbalah and Chasidus. So he concludes, Limud Chasidus machnes chayes b'chol inyan ve'inyan b'chol chelkei hapshat ha'meshur shabai shalem l'Torah. So not only does it, in Hasidic literature, and there are literally hundreds of svarim of Hasidic literature throughout the ages, hundreds of svarim in Chabad itself, which is the biggest collection of literature in the world of Hasidus. There are a lot of authors of Chasidus outside of Chabad, all coming from the same source, from the Baal Shem Tov. So Chasidus, not only will you find in the library of Hasidic work, will you find explanations of the simple meaning of the text, and halacha, and drasha, and Kabbalah, but Chasidus gives a new vitality, and it energizes and inspires all aspects of Torah. Shechayhu ba'ofen achar legamri b'chayis atzmi, v'chayis emoisiv gam behirus v'oimik yosev avonosei. It will give a new depth and a new vitality, or what you say, a new umph, in the learning of Gemara, and in the learning of Halacha, and in the learning of the text, and the medrash, and the stories, is going to have a new umph and a new energy in all of that. Now, before we continue, there's something very deep that scholars of Chasidus really love to analyze in a footnote. He does translate part of it, but I would like to elaborate more on footnote, the Hebrew footnote. It's Nun Gimel. In the back are the Hebrew notes. The Hebrew notes are the notes of the original text. Over here, he touches it in the English footnote 71. But I'm gonna, if you can follow the Hebrew, you'll see. I'm gonna share with you certain points that the English didn't really, let us say, do justice to. It's about the link and the connection between Chasidus and the Kabbalah, which is something very important. To some people, the study of Chasidus is attractive because through Chasidus they understand the Kabbalah. And especially the teachings of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe set about to explain concepts of Kabbalah. For example, Mamala Kalam and Asayv Kalam. These are lines from the Zohar. Hashem fills the worlds and He surrounds the worlds. So the Alter Rebbe developed, what does this mean? There's two levels of godliness. There's a level of godliness that's in everything. So in this watch is, so to say, the atomic energy, the spiritual, the godly atomic energy, so to say, for no better word, that's in the watch. That's atomic. That's mamala. It fills. Then there's the energy that is, so to say, energizing the world that doesn't come so low. It's the bligvul. It's too high and too intense to fill the world and to be sensed in the world and come down and limit itself. So there's a whole discussion about levels of godliness. There's a lakuos godliness, the way he limited himself, he's enclosed in nature, in the details, and then there's the godly energy that's above that. That is a transcendent. Soiv Kalamal. The Alter Rebbe in different Mamar explains this 10 spheres. And the Alter Rebbe explains in Chasidus, and especially later Rebbeim, in the Kabbalah they talk about the light and the vessel. In the Igeres Tshuva classes, we touch some of that. The names of Hashem, how the names of Hashem are connected and are in us. And which name of Hashem? The Shem Havaya. And what is the Yud? And what is the Hey? And what is the Vav? And what is the Hey? What do they symbolize in godly energy? And then in us. And how come when we do a sin, it sort of say cracks and pollutes the lower Hey? So this is Kabbalah ideas. Why tshuva is tashav hey. So we learned that whole chapter against the tshuva. This is Kabbalah ideas. That really is one line in the Zohar, or one line in the writings of the Arizal. 3 lines in the writings of the Arizal. And we learned several chapters explaining these ideas. So yes, I personally find it fascinating. If I want to understand Kabbalah, I say, what does Chasidus talk about this point in Kabbalah? And to many, this is the most interesting and attractive idea, because the Alter Rebbe took ideas of Kabbalah and he put it in a philosophical and an intellectual presentation, so you can actually understand concepts of Kabbalah. But Chasidus is deeper than that. And this is what he speaks about This is what he mentioned in the parentheses. He says, since you see Chasidus deals with all aspects of Torah, and it's not limited to explaining Kabbalah, so you understand, therefore, that Chasidus is not just an explanation of Kabbalah. It's something that's beyond that. And he brings a quote in Nun Gimel. So I'm going to say some of the Hebrew and then elaborate on it, because I think it's very important. He brings a quote from the Rebbe Rashab. That's the fifth Rebbe. When we go to the oil, we see two Rebbes, right? On the right side is the previous Rebbe. His father was the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Doiber. And there's a quote from what he said. Die Welt meint, as Chasidus is a bir of Kabbalah, das Zatos. The masses think that what's Chasidus, it's an explanation of the Kabbalah. It's a mistake. So he, so to say, punctured the balloon that Chasidus came to explain Kabbalah. Is Chasidus an explanation of Kabbalah? Yes. But that's not what Chasidus came. It's something that's deeper and that's deeper and higher. It's part of Chasidus, but that's not what it's all about. And that's why it's a vitality in all aspects of Torah. Then he continues. The line of the Rebbe Rashab was, Kabbalah is a beer of Chasidus. Kabbalah explains Chasidus. No? The Welt meant, the people out there in the world at large think Chasidus' explanation of Kabbalah. Yeah, so we learned, I guess, a tshuva. That's why you smile. Why? He was explaining desire. This could be, this sin has no tshuva, and then Reish Chachma said, has a tshuva, and how do we understand? Oh, we studied. It was explaining Kabbalah. And he says, no. It's the other way around. Kabbalah explains Chasidus. So the Rebbe explains in this footnote. What does that mean? What does it mean Kabbalah explains Chasidus? So he explains, Yesh Leimer, HaChasidus in Yana Yediyas HaLakus. Chasidus is to know God. It's to know godliness. It's not about an intellectual enterprise. It's not intellectual acrobatics. Intellectuals love to study Chabad Chasidus. Loves philosophy. It is this philosophy. As a teenager, I was enthralled by the intellectual, the logic of Chasidus. How Yiddishkeit is a certain depth of philosophy. Philosophy is someone who loves logic. It's a thrill. But that's not the point. It's not about your thrill. It's about having a grasp of Hashem. Because when you have a grasp in your mind of Hashem, you're connecting to Hashem and you know Hashem. So Chassidus inyana yediyas elokos. It's knowing Hashem. And in parentheses, Yechida mekabelis ma yachid. Chassidus, we explain, is Yechida. There is Yachid and Yechida. Yechida is the feminine form. Yachid is the masculine. Yachid means the only one. The only one is referring to Hashem. Yechida is the feminine one who's receiving from Hashem. And he takes a sentence from Laharim Eitz Chaim, famous line from Eitz Chaim, which Chasidus is, it's one of the fundamental points of Chasidus. What's a neshama? What's a neshama? Nitzutz Chulu. There's a spark of the Creator. God. There's a spark of God. Mislabesh is b'koyach nitzutz nivra. And this spark of God is enclosed, goes into a spark of a neshama. So the neshama is something created by Hashem, and in it, so to say, enclosed in it, there's God. That is Hanikra Yechida. So that neshama, which has in it that spark of God is neshama. Now, to say such a line, and how do we understand it? And the literalists will probably go crazy with such a line, but this is a quote from the Eitz Chaim. And this is the core of Chasidus as far as how you look at another Yid. When you look at another Yid, you don't see his physicality. You don't see if he's a Hungarian or an American or a Russian or a Bukhari or a Taimani. You see a neshama. And you don't even see neshama. You see godliness. That's how the Rebbe looked at every Yid. That's why he never got tired giving out hours, dollars. Just giving, because he saw the godliness in us. And what did he want to bring out in us? Next week is the 70th anniversary since the Rebbe became Rebbe. That godliness in us. So what is Chasidus? The Chasidus is to bring into us, to connect and to in the godliness in us. So we know Hashem, just like the neshama is connected to Hashem. To reveal that, we have to know Hashem. So what does Chasidus explains about Hashem? It explains the Torah and mitzvahs. Explains all of that is to grasp, to have a grasp, at least in our mind. That's Chabad Chasidus, Hashem. What's Kabbalah? That's Chasidus. It's grasping Hashem. Kabbalah doesn't explain itself, especially the writings of the Arizal. There's no logic. What does the Arizal do? Maps it out. Kabbalah maps it all out. There's the lower world, Asiya, our world. There's Yetzirah, a world above us. There's the angels and the Atzilas. In Yetzirah, let's say Baruch Shem, Baruch Kvoed, Hashem Koyme. There's the angels of Kodesh, Beriah. There's Elam Atzilas. So the Kabbalah maps out the whole spiritual cosmos, so to say, the order, and which mitzvahs are connected to which levels up there. Or Mamala Kalam, Seva Kalam, and there's lower levels of godliness, higher levels of godliness, but it doesn't explain it. So you don't have a grasp of what's going on, but you do have a map of what's going on. So the Rebbe says, through that map you understand Chasidus. What does it mean that Kabbalah is an understanding of Chasidus? What do you mean Kabbalah understanding of Chasidus? I learned Kabbalah, I don't understand anything. So how does a Kabbalah an understanding of Chasidus? I learned Chasidus have an understanding. So what does it mean by that? He means to say, what is the point of it all? To have an understanding of Hashem. What is the point of everything? Of the whole creation, of the whole existence? Is coming a Mashiach. What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? So what does the pasuk say? Ki mol ha'aretz deis Hashem. The world will be full with knowledge of God. And that's how Rambam concludes his magnum opus of 14 volumes, with the last 2 chapters tell us about that the climax of it all is Mashiach. And what is the climax of Mashiach? He says it's not about peace and prosperity and all of the fun things that are going to happen when Mashiach comes. What is the climax of Mashiach? What's the purpose? Why did our sages in the Savu desired for the days of Mashiach? Because then we're going to experience God. Mol ha'aretz deis Hashem. The world will grasp Hashem. And Chasidus is giving us a taste of that. Because Chasidus is a taste of Mashiach's Torah and a Mashiach world. So now, the point is to understand Hashem. But how do you understand Hashem? So therefore, we have tools. We have a map. So there's the map. What does it say? We need tools and terminology of Kabbalah to have an understanding. So the Chasidus of Chabad is the logic. But you have to have the tools. So for example, that line, there's God who, of the Zohar, there's God who fills the world, there's God who surrounds the world. God fills the world, surrounds the world. So good. So we know that there's two levels of God. Who says there's two levels of God? The Zohar says there's two levels of God. Or the spheres. There's the 10 spheres. So they're giving us the map. There are these things. Through them we have the capability of understanding Hashem. Chassidus really wants the point is the connection to Hashem. And Chabad emphasizes the intellectual understanding of Hashem and godliness, and the levels of godliness, and the purpose and the meaning of our Torah mitzvahs, and through which we can connect to godliness. It's all about Yediyas Elokus.
So Kabbalah is really
so
explaining Chasidus.
So that's what it means, very good. That Kabbalah is explaining Chasidus. It means that the Kabbalah concepts not intellectually explain the Chasidus. The Kabbalah concepts explains the Chasidus because they're the tools, so to say, with which we can come to understanding the Yediyas Elokus, like he says. Then he says something in the last two lines, which many scholars of the Rebbe's Torah are struggling with to understand. Let me show you my take. Kain Lahar. So the Rebbe is now explaining this idea that Chasidus is not an explanation, really a explanation of Kabbalah. That's not its point, but it's the other way around. Kabbalah's explanation of Chasidus. Because the Chasidus is really about connecting. So he says, he goes into Keser. Now we know Keser, in terms of Kabbalah, is the crown. The crown is above the head. So it's higher than the spheres, so to say. Or it's the highest sphere, or the source of the spheres. In other words, in plain language, it's the source of all levels of godliness that come below the Keser. So Keser is the crown. Like in a human, a king, what makes the king king? It's the crown. So therefore, his words have different meaning, his feelings are different, his action is different. He's Keser is, so Keser is a Kabbalistic term. Keser.
Right, the same Chasidus is king.
So no, okay, well, we're soon getting. Let me give my introduction. That Keser is the crown. So now, the crown. What's the purpose of the crown? The pchin of Keser, the sphere of Keser, or the source of the sphere, is there are two things to Keser. There's the essence of the Keser, and how Keser expresses itself in the intellect, in Chachma. So he says, Kein lahar asher gilui ha-Keser choshech hu b'Chachma kotzei shel yud b'yud yechida b'chaya haratzon b'Chachma v'chol. The crown, so to say, is above the mind, above the head. The head is the understanding, right? The crown is above that. The crown is, like in a king, that's his essence. He is king. That symbolically makes him king. Therefore, he's the king and above everyone, the source of everyone, and he is the essence of the whole country. He's the king. Now, what's our connection with the king? So the first step is to understand, because the closest thing to the crown is the mind. So that's the sphera Chachma. This Keser, this Chachma. So there is how the crown, which in itself is a hidden mystery, what he calls darkness, it comes down to Chachma, the Gilui, how it's revealed. But then it says in Kabbalah Chasidus that the real essence of the crown comes down in action. Or to put it in a governmental idea, there's understanding the crown, then how the crown governs. Bottom line, the king is the crown, and the closest level to the crown are the wise people who understand the king. So the king is the king. He's So Hashem is the level of the crown is higher than the crown is the source of all creation. It's higher than understanding. And then we try to understand what we could about that level of Hashem that's higher than understanding, the Keser. And then, like the crown by a king, the bottom line is, with the power of the crown, he can be what the ancients would call a king philosopher. But the bottom line is he governing the land well? Is the land prospering? Is there crime in the street? Are people happy? Is there prosperity? Is there peace? So, in words of Kabbalah, is the crown has to come down to action. Where is the essence of the crown is expressed not in the B'china of Chokhmah, that understands the crown. What you understand is just the revelation of the crown. But the crown, real expression is how it comes down to action. And what I think the Rebbe's point over here is that what Chasidus explains Kabbalah is explaining the hiddenness, the mystery of Hashem. But more important than that is HaChasidus is life-changing in the practical life. HaChasidus inspires us to do mitzvahs practically. HaChasidus inspires us to have joy. HaChasidus inspires us to love another Jew, to look like at another Jew, to go put on tefillin with other Yidden, to be optimistic and to see how the world can be changed, to be optimistic about the future of the world because the world is really an expression of godliness, so it has to turn around. This crazy insanity that we see in the world, this is going to turn around. That's what the prophets and the Nevi'im told us about. Maisa. So, what's Chasidus? When Chasidus explains Kabbalah. Does Chasidus explain Kabbalah? Yes, Chasidus explains Kabbalah. In fact, even in the last 100 years, there were Mekubalim who wrote texts to explain, not Chabad rabbis, Mekubalim who wanted to explain Kabbalah would quote paragraphs and pages from Chabad. As I said, yes, this is explained. This in Pasach Eliyah, the introduction of Tikkunei Zohar. You want to understand that? Read the memoir of the Alter Rebbe, Mittler Rebbe. You want to understand this? Read about Spheres, Oiris, V'Kelim. Here it's the memoir of the Rebbe Rashab. So the people of Kabbalah who really want to understand Kabbalah, they're quoting and they're studying Chassidus. So what the Rebbe is saying here is, that is the revelation of the crown. But that's not the real power of the crown. The toikif and the essence of the crown, the power and the essence of the crown, is that it changed lives in the physical, in their action. And that's what the Rebbe was so much into that. Go out the streets, put on tefillin with people. So now what? What's the b'chein? You're learning Chasidus, now what? How does it impact you? Change your behavior. We're talking about life-changing. So it's not about, you're going to have 7 habits and 13 tips, right? So then there's Torah. Torah is the aha. And then Chasidus is the aha of the aha. And now, going back to the text here, he brings, I found this very deep, it's really based on the Rogatchover Gaon, who passed away in the early 30s, I believe. He had long hair. They would say he looks like Einstein. He was the Einstein of the Talmud, the secularists would say. His form are very deep. And he makes an interesting point about the laws of Yom Kippur. I'm going to soon read it inside, but I'll give you the point. On Yom Kippur, there's a whole order of sacrifices, of offerings. A list of different animals. Now, every day, there was a lamb in the morning and a lamb in the afternoon. Then at Shabbos and Yontif, Musaf. So 7 lambs, a bull, a goat, a bunch of what's called the additional stuff. So there's the regular Korban Tamid, daily. Then on Yontif, there's Musaf. And then on Yom Kippur, it's also Yontif. So you have Musaf of Yom Kippur. Right? So the additional stuff for the holiday. Beside that, on Yom Kippur, there were services that were held in the Holy of Holies. Only once a year, the Kohen Gadol go in to the Holy of Holies, and he burned incense over there, he sprayed blood over there from the blood of the sacrifices, and he said a prayer in the Holy of Holies. Only the Kohen Gadol, only the high priest, the priest of all priests, so the Kohen Gadol, goes in there once a year. So the halacha is, even though bringing the daily sacrifice to Korban Tamid, any kohen could do. So any kohen. So you have to learn the laws. Eventually Mashiach is going to come and say, hey kohen, I want to bring a kohen. So I need Amram. I need Aaron. I need a kohen. So any kohen could bring the Korban Tamid. Shabbos, Yontiv, the additional karbanes, the Kohen Gadol could stay in his study, in his room. He doesn't have to do any of the services. I can have Aaron. I can have Yankel doing the services. On Yom Kippur, only the Kohen Gadol can go into the Holy of Holies. Now, what is the halacha, however? That on Yom Kippur, even the regular stuff, so to say, you have to have the Kohen Gadol do it. So on Yom Kippur, also the first thing in the morning, the lamb, which only a regular Kohen do, who else has to do that? And then the Musafim, all the lambs and the bulls and the goats, only which every Shabbos or Yontif, a regular Kohen does, Kohen Gadol has to do that. So what happened? Just because the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur has to go into the Holy of Holies, and only the Kohen Gadol can go into the Kodesh HaKodashim, that changed the whole day. That everything that day has to be Kohen Gadol. So what does that mean? So the Rabbi Zushe wanted to point out that that what happens really Yom Kippur is a total paradigm change. So therefore, it doesn't only affect the special Yom Kippur avodah, especially Yom Kippur services. It affects everything in Yom Kippur. It affects the regular avodah of every day. What Chasidus wants to do is, the Chasidus is, so to say, the Holy of Holies of Torah. When you bring Chasidus into your life, it's not only illuminates, so to say, the higher levels of my relationship with Hashem, but it changes your swagger, your walk, your joy, your melody, your hum, your davening, your regular everyday stuff. That's what Chasidus is supposed to do. It's how the crown affects the whole government. And in the terms of the halach and the laws of Yom Kippur, just like the holiness of Yom Kippur is unique and special, because only a Kohen Gadol can go in there only once a year. So just like Yom Kippur is special because you're going into the Holy of Holies, but once you're tuned into the Yom Kippur mode, Kachi poyeles gam batmidum musafim hamishtaichem etzad atzmi chol mehashana. So it affects also the regular order of the services of the Beis HaMikdash. They too have to be in a Yom Kippur mode. In other words, that stuff which all year regularly are done by a regular Kohen have to be done by a Kohen Gadol. They also become sanctified with the holiness of Yom Kippur. The Holy of Holies of Torah. The Shabbos of the Shabbat. Yom Kippur is called the Shabbos of the Shabbos. Every Shabbos is Shabbos. Kippur is called Shabbos Shabbos, a super Shabbos. So when you're talking about Torah, to borrow that term and apply it of Torah, there is the Shabbos of Torah. It affects all aspects of Torah. The Pshat Remesh Drush side. Because in Torah, the Adalah Rabchinas Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaya Shabbatera. Just like in the Neshama, there's 4 levels: Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaya. They correspond to the 4 parts of Torah study: Pshat, Remesh, Drush, Side. So Torah Chasidus is just like in the Neshama, the Torah Chasidus Yechida, because the Kabbalah says that Mashiach is connected to Yechida, and the study of Chasidus and the general revelation of Chasidus is linked directly to the coming of Mashiach. So therefore that affects also whatever we're going to learn. Whatever we're going to learn in Torah, by studying Chasidus, and so to say, plugging into that higher energy of Chasidus, it affects all aspects of Torah. And I think the bottom line over here is, and I'd like to make an application. So, chapter 8 we're studying this week. It's that Chasidus is giving us an opportunity to plug into a higher level, a more intense level of Yiddishkeit, a more intense level of the Yiddish experience. So, sometimes you think high level, that's Keser, if we want to borrow terms of Kabbalah. Like I spoke to someone, I says, come learn Chasidus. He says, no, that's too high for me. I'm learning Gemara, I'm learning Chumash, Pirkei Avos. So I was thinking now about what is he saying over here? He's saying in effect, when you learn Chasidus, the Gemara is a different Gemara. You're going to look at Gemara differently. You're going to look at Pirkei Avos differently. You're going to look at Chumash differently. Not only will you find, if you're a scholar or you're well-read in the literature, you're going to find new insights in Pshat, in the story. And you're going to find new insights in Remesh Drusayid. But also, there's a certain energy and a certain essence that Chasidus has that illuminates everything. Because it is that Keser quality coming down and energizing everything and empowering everything. And practically what this means, that we have to tune into the study of Chasidus, the study of Torah in generally, because really Torah in general is that energy source. And Chasidus is already, so to say, higher voltage that's in the Torah itself, and that will give us whatever we need. We're talking about the habits and the tips. You know, when we have that Chasidische energy, our day is going to be happier, our attitude will be more optimistic, our Torah mitzvah observance will be more meaningful and have more purpose, and you'll have joy in life, be a better person, a better husband, a better wife, a better father, a better son, because we're full of that vitality that comes from Torah. And the soul and the spirit of Torah that's on Kabbalah and Chasidus, and it's a life changer in every way. Good night.